Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a video and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Today, I'm delighted to welcome a very, very accomplished media individual who's also in advertising, Suvir Bajaj. Suvir, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Ashutosh. Thanks for having me here. It's an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. Suvir is the co-founder of Zoo Media and Foxymoron. He likes scuba diving, and he's just telling me he's returned from Gulmarg after skiing. He likes mountain climbing, and he and his agency have won over 200 awards for campaigns across the world. Wow. So, Suvir, what would you say are three key milestones in your life or your career?
Thanks for that, Ashutosh. Interesting question, actually. We made the mistake of stumbling into entrepreneurship at a very young age, actually, at the age of 19, in between my second and third year of college. I know I'm saying it's a mistake now, but I guess you can look at it from either side of the spectrum. I think, the first milestone for me was actually 2006, just prior to us having ventured on into business. And a lot of validation back in college came from the fact that you put your mind to something, and you could actually do it. And I set up something called, a Model United Nations conference in my college. I went to a college in Churchgate called HR College, which gave me, a lot of boost, in validating the fact that if I really put my mind to something, I'm able to kind of put, things together. And that's where the confidence to really, start my own business at the age of 19 came from. So I think that was a very big milestone for me personally in the year 2006. Of course, in 2008, the second milestone was when at the age of 19, we actually started a business of our own, and which is now, we'll talk about over the next few minutes, over this conversation. And I think the third milestone for me came in the year 2015, when we started getting a lot of, recognition for the work that we were doing on a variety of different platforms. Our agency went through, our industry went through a lot of corporate consolidation, and there was a lot of movement of, several moving parts. And things came together pretty nicely, I should say, very serendipitously, in 2015, when there was a little bit of consolidation, and we started getting the right kind of attention to our organization. So I think there have been three interesting milestones that have kind of really helped define a lot of professional and personal growth over the last 10 years.
Terrific. So Suvir, let's talk about Zoo Media and Foxymoron. I'm assuming Foxymoron comes from oxymoron.
That's right, it does.
But when I was reading about you, you say you're a one-stop solution provider for brands. Tell me more, because brands, I thought, needed lots of inputs.
Well, you're right, actually. So typically the offline agency world has two large pillars, right? There's creative and there's media. With digital, of course, there's creative, media, and there's technology, which acts as a very strong third pillar that, that services are built on. Now, as this industry has kind of evolved over the last 10 odd years, and of course, there was no digital prior to that, as you can imagine, essentially in about 2012 or 13, we chose to sit at the intersection of content, media, tech, and data. A lot of agencies started choosing specializations, saying that they would be digital creative agencies or digital media first agencies. But I think one thing that really set us apart from a variety of competition was that we chose to sit at the intersection of content, media, data, and tech. And that has been our narrative through and through the last 10 odd years. And in fact, that's held us in a slightly competitively advantageous position over our competition, because while you're rightly saying that, brands definitely do need multiple inputs, they anyway have a media agency in the offline space, a creative agency in the offline space, a PR agency, an events and an activation agency. And now if you try and split this digital pie as well down 3 or 4 ways, it kind of increases the number of inputs exponentially. And we thought that kind of consolidating this inside one bucket gives us the bandwidth to be this one-stop solutions provider, which a lot of clients really appreciate in that context. So I feel it's given us a nice leg up over a lot of competition, and also given us the ability to grow ourselves in terms of our expertise and our team and our capabilities as well.
Very interesting. So, if you look at digital agencies, how would you say they are different from the traditional, if I can use the term, brick and mortar agency?
Sure. Well, You know what's really interesting is that when this industry started, this digital industry started, it constituted two cohorts of people. One was guys like me who came in with absolutely no background or experience in advertising or marketing. And then there was, of course, the traditional folks that tried to run the digital business as well. I think the one fundamental difference with guys like me is that since we have no baggage, we were able to adapt to the digital speed and way of working in a very, very quick fashion. We didn't have, I don't mean to use the word baggage with a negative connotation, but we didn't have traditional baggage where, you take one idea and, it's deep rooted for 6 months and then you build one TV commercial around it. With digital, I mean, you're doing one new campaign, on digital every month, or maybe two campaigns every month. And I guess it requires a certain amount of agility and a speed of working. Also, I mean, the platform keeps changing, the digital platform keeps changing, and the agility also requires you to recognize the changes and the innovation and technology and platform and partners that we work with, such as Google and Amazon and Facebook. And I guess being digital natives, we've grown up with cell phones in our hands as opposed to reading newspapers. It gave us that competitive advantage, over the guys from the generation above us, who then had a slightly longer learning curve than us. Of course, I mean, when it comes to culture as well, we've been able to build culture that's as agile and as vociferous as as we are as well. And and that's been able to really accelerate the industry running at a certain pace, which demands, or which kind of wiggles out the innovation and the creativity in a digital fashion that maybe the brick and mortar does not permit, because of the constraints that television or print or radio have historically brought onto it. So I feel that the cultural paradigm as well has been very refreshing, with a new breed of people getting into advertising that may not have gotten into it had it not been for this new medium, that's kind of given opportunity.
So it's almost as if someone, if I'm asked to suddenly give a speech in Hindi, I think in English and then translate into Hindi, or vice versa for a lot of people. So what you're really saying is that the brick and mortar agencies first think brick and mortar and then translate digital.
Almost.
You are doing is you're thinking digital.
Almost, yeah. That's a nice way of summarizing it.
Wonderful. Okay. So tell me, over the years, when I was with ITC and I was involved in launching Sundrop Oil, etc. The advertising manager and the agency were always the heroes, always partying, and as someone who was junior, it was very aspirational to be invited to these parties.
Right.
How has advertising changed over the years?
So we were not from a generation that involved, the parties. I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. We of course hear so many stories from our predecessors, but we're not from that generation. I think. So I think the first change that I have noticed, to be honest, in my career is very, very quickly, everyone got a seat at the table, right? Typically, the advertising that I was introduced to during my internships demanded that only the creative agency had a seat at the table, who was really calling the shots, who was really giving idea and shape to a campaign. And then everyone's kind of picking up their pieces of the puzzle, thereon. The media guys are then presenting a media plan, and the offline guy, the activation guys are presenting, an events plan. Today, everyone has a seat at the table. Today, it doesn't make a difference whether you're an events guy, PR guy, talent guy, digital guy. Everyone has a seat at the table, and everyone is able to kind of pitch into what they believe the brand should stand for. And I think this participative and inclusive fashion of building brands has been a real game changer for people. The second thing is this, and I'm going to build on to the point that I made about inclusivity, is I think because advertising it used to be, an old boys club, to be honest, right? There were 20 guys or 50 guys in the country that would be building, every brand that is worth its, weight and salt to be built. Today, I feel that landscape has opened up dramatically. You look at either the breed of agencies in terms of the quality, in terms of the quantity, and in terms of the subject matter expertise and specialization, such as guys like us, who technically get into the industry with no pedigree, with no background, but are still at the forefront of building some of the biggest brands in the country, just by virtue of the fact that it's gotten so much more inclusive in terms of talent, and people are so much more receptive to young guys coming in and participating and, and really overhauling the process in that context. And I think the third large change is that, and I see this, of course, very greatly in my career, is that with digital, one of the biggest advantages of us doing what we do is that every piece of action that we take is measurable. So we're able to go back and, we're able to tell our brands that if you're spending, X many $1 million, it's resulting in Y many $1 million of sales, because we've now been able to enable your e-commerce channels and your marketplaces and your omni-channel commerce strategy, versus traditional advertising that went back and several years ago and said, look, you're getting, this is the reach you're getting, this is the listenership, and this is the viewership that you're getting, which are advertising metrics. And today, I feel the big change is that we've started becoming partners to business as opposed to partners to just marketing. And that's been the third real change that I've noticed over the course of my brief career.
And that is so incredible. Again, let me go back. I'm much older, but let me go back to when I was doing my MBA. And I remember in a marketing pro course, we've always told David Ogilvy said, only 50% of advertising works. Nobody knows which 50. So now you are changing that paradigm also, because you're saying everything is measurable.
Absolutely.
Amazing. Well done. So, so we tell me, there are most advertising communication has been happening through print and TV.
That's right.
Right. But now there are so many more social media platforms available.
That's right.
How are print and TV, the traditional channels, adapting to digital formats?
So, Ashutosh, that's an interesting question, actually. And this is a, common debate between marketers around the world. And the commonality, actually, to be honest, is that it's been print and it's been television historically for years, and
Correct.
Digital has just been around for the last decade or so. In India, digital constitutes about 20%, just to give you some context. The fundamental, though, when it comes to building brands, is that the medium is less relevant, right? It's digital today, which is the medium, but it's just one new medium that's being slapped on to the marketing mix. At the end of the day, the brand is still the brand, the customer is still the customer, the insight is still the insight, the communication is still the communication. We're just choosing Today, we're choosing a slightly more engaging medium and engaging formats to communicate to those new users who found these new mediums of communication to talk to each other on. But fundamentally speaking, the behest of what advertising stands for will always be the same, which is why, in fact, the guys with, the 30 and the 40 years of experience have been able to adapt to this medium so beautifully as well, because the fundamentals of advertising will really be the same in that context. And I don't think that's really going to change, for the times to come.
Correct. And I guess for a country the size of India, print and TV will continue to be very major mediums for a long time.
Absolutely, they will definitely, because at the end of the day, like you're saying, 1.3 billion people, television reaches over 750 million people, and it is a numbers game in a country like India. In fact, because you asked, the print and television guys have learned how to sell their inventory very creatively on the back of what role it plays or what objective it plays that can get bundled into what digital does. So for example, can I do a television plus YouTube plan? Yes, of course I can, because they're both video first mediums that help you achieve similar objectives in that fashion, but maybe talk to different audiences, because your generation is more likely to be found on television, mine more likely to be found on YouTube. So can the same format, which is video, be bundled together and sold with similar objectives? And that's really the strategy that a lot of the television and the print guys are adopting today.
Fabulous. And again, I was reading an article which said a large number of the big advertisers have started keeping a separate budget for social media. Right? How is social media changing advertising? You just told me YouTube and television could collaborate, but how is YouTube going to change television?
No, very true, actually. So, like I said previously, digital currently constitutes, give or take, about 20% of the advertising pie in India, slightly higher and slightly in first world nations. But very interestingly, 10 years ago when we started, there was no concept of digital. And I think early 2010, the concept of social started becoming popular at the time. And of course, Google search is the largest chunk of digital advertising. And now Amazon has eaten a big piece of that pie as well. But outside of that, of course, the largest pieces of advertising online are social, which is Facebook or YouTube or Instagram or Twitter, and now WhatsApp for Business also becoming a large part of that mix in that context. The biggest difference, I think, has always been the fact that digital allows for interactivity and for measurement. What's really interesting is that advertising has two fundamentals, right? There's reach and there's frequency. So I'm able to reach a certain number of people, and then
Correct.
I'm able to, reach them a certain number of times.
Mm.
And the more number of times I reach them with similar communication or different communication, kind of helps them navigate down, this consumer journey down this funnel. Excuse me, sorry. What's interesting is that marketers are now becoming cognizant about the fact that it's the same user who's watching television at 9 p.m. and probably the same user who's then, scrolling on his cell phone at 10 p.m.
Correct.
And if I'm able to now capture that user journey across screens or across devices, do I now have a slightly more compelling story to tell? Okay. And I think with the use of modern technology, and obviously digital guys really championing this, you're now able to tell if it's the same user who's seen your TV commercial on television at 9 p.m. during prime time, and then probably scrolling on his phone prior to sleeping, and you show him follow-up communication that then reestablishes the brand from the perspective of recall or consideration or what it may be. And I think this amalgamation and this marriage of media really coming together, with the use of the right technology and the right tracking and the right, user journey being mapped, is really bridging the offline world and the online world in a beautiful fashion.
Wonderful. So I'm going to now move to another question. Just before we started, you told me that you had just launched your podcast.
That's right.
Tell me about your podcast.
Sure. So my podcast was actually a passion project from lockdown. As a media professional, I've of course been very cognizant of the role that, the responsibility that the media has in context to news journalism, in context to entertainment and pop culture. And in 2006, I had the privilege of actually visiting Pakistan in the same year that I mentioned in the first few minutes of this conversation for a Model United Nations, where some friends of mine and I were representing India at the Lahore University of Management Sciences, and befriended a bunch of college students there, and obviously kept in touch with a bunch of them. And as a result, have obviously had friends across the border, which I don't think too many Indians can really say. And Umair and I have been chatting aggressively because Umair is also an ad man like me. He runs a very successful agency based out of Karachi called Ishtihari. Okay. And we've been chatting about the role the media plays or is responsible for in context to, sensitization of the between vis-a-vis each other's cultures or what it may be. And of course there are political differences and ideological differences between our countries that will always kind of tear us apart, but we don't necessarily have the same kind of baggage that maybe the generations above us did. So my family is from undivided India. So of course they have a lot of stories to tell. And of course that comes with a lot of baggage, but our generation doesn't necessarily carry the same baggage. And as media professionals who are, maybe paving the way for generations ahead of us, we felt that it was our responsibility that we at least got a conversation going, between the youth of our side of the border and of the other side of the border. And we've started a podcast now called 883 to Infinity. Okay. 883 being the number of kilometers it takes to drive from Bombay to Karachi. Okay. Which, if you really think about it, you can do overnight. Correct. But if you start driving, it's going to take you for infinity because you can't cross the border. Absolutely. With, and you've been, so what that experience is like. And we look at the relationship between India and Pakistan in the lens of content, creativity, culture, not in the lens of politics and journalism. Correct. And not in the context of tutu meme and he said, she said. I'm with you. Yeah. And every week we're featuring guests from cultural backgrounds like music and food and sport, of course, cricket being, at the cornerstone of the India-Pakistan relationship, who really talk about how their experiences have helped cement bonds with their counterparts across the border and discuss the similarities and, of course, celebrate the differences because there are differences and we celebrate those differences. So we actually just went live yesterday. It's called 883 to Infinity and available on all podcasting platforms.
Well, congratulations and all the best. I'm sure a topic as interesting as India-Pakistan will be a huge success. Good luck. So, Sumit, I'm now going to move to the last segment of our conversation, which is some questions for you personally. My first question is that as a media person who's building an amazing digital agency, what are some of the core values you believe in?
So it's interesting you ask me that question because I think, being a young entrepreneur myself, it was very important for guys like us to kind of, sink our feet very, very firmly into the soil when it comes to the values of what we stand
Correct.
for
Yeah.
as individuals and as an organization as well. And I think for people who really take a bet on us long term, whether it be, the teams that work with us or the clients that work with us, they buy into, the value proposition that we really stand for. The values that we stand for, the acronym that we call is that we use is ICECUBE, ICEEE. What that stands for is the I is integrity, and I think that stands for a lot in the industry
Correct.
that we work with. Has several question marks that kind of keep popping up, in different junctures of the way. So integrity probably is the most important one that we stand for. The second one is C, which is creationism, and creationism fundamentally means creating something from nothing. Slightly different from creativity. We expect everyone to be creative, but creationism essentially means that I have the wherewithal to create something from nothing. And then we've got 3 E's at the back of it. The first E is excellence. Whatever you do it to the best capacity. Do it in the fashion that the stakeholder on the other side would be the most pleased with you. The second is endurance, which means you get knocked down once, you keep getting up, you keep delivering, keep coming back the second and the third time. And the last E, which I think is the most important and we like to end with, which is empathy. And I think that that's something that our generation pays a lot of attention to and a lot of focus on. And, there's a lot of emphasis on empathy and really understanding the diversity in terms of culture, in terms of inclusiveness, and in terms of making your workplace as habitable and your environment as, welcoming to everyone around you.
I must compliment you and your team who've thought this, because the first time I'm hearing of empathy in communication. I think that's fantastic. Good luck.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So again, my next question, Suvir, is that as you look at where you are today, and you're very early in your career, at this stage of life, what does success mean to you?
I keep saying this, and I have this conversation with a lot of people as well. Friday evening conversations, nice weather, nice whiskey, nice company. For me, actually, I define success very easily. For me, I consider myself to be successful on any given day if I can A, go to sleep, and B, wake up both times with a smile on my face.
Wonderful.
I think I've had a successful day or week or month or year if I can achieve both of these two things.
Terrific. And a follow-up question to that is, what or who inspires you?
That's interesting. So, as you kind of read out in my introduction, I'm someone who likes to spend a lot of time outdoors. I like to spend a lot of time in nature, whether it's in the ocean or in the mountains or in the desert or in a safari. A lot of my inspiration personally has come from what I see in the outdoors, in nature. In fact, if you notice, the companies that we work with as well, the lead agency being called Foxymoron, and there are 6 more agencies in the network, called Pollen and the Rabbit Hole, and all of these agencies actually named after animals. Very interestingly, you notice, like Foxymoron obviously being the fox, and Pollen being the bees, and Doino Inc. being the pig, and Mammoth being the elephant. And we gain a lot of our inspiration from, from nature, from animals, because I think there are so many fundamental truths that exist in nature that cannot be contested. The sun will always rise in the east and set in the west. There'll always be oceanic temperaments that will be beyond our control. And there are so many life lessons to kind of be absorbed and taken in from these. And you learn beyond the point that we are just, a mere speck or a mere dot on the larger horizon when you compare yourself to, the vista outside, the 16 by 9 screen that we're staring at right now. So personally, I think a lot of my inspiration comes from outside the doors and outside the windows of our everyday 9 to 5.
Terrific. I'm going to ask you my last question, and this is for the thousands of people who will listen to us and watch us. You're a millennial, I'm assuming. And therefore, I'm going to ask you that for the generation who's coming behind you, which is the Gen Zs, what would your advice be to a young Gen Z who's starting off on their career as in the working community?
So, it's interesting because a lot of Gen Z ask this question as well, and the question that I get asked the most.
So I'm asking you this as a post-independence child. So therefore.
The question that I get asked the most, in fact, when I talk to college students, etc., about entrepreneurship, is how do you know when is the right time? And that's the question that I get asked the most. And, I've scratched my beard several times trying to intellectualize this question. And I think this question can be asked or answered in context to work or in context to life as well, right?
Correct.
Because a lot of large life decisions as you keep growing from your teens to your 20s to your 30s. And I think the formidable answer that I've landed on every single time is that you will never know whether it's the right time to or not. You know, and I think the right time is the day you dive in and say, I'm doing it today. And the answer to that question should be today, because there's absolutely no point delaying, right? So the one piece of advice that I always give people is, you're sitting on a great idea, but ideas are not worth anything, right? You've got to dive in, you've got to do something about it. So start today. And that's the one piece of advice I give to all Gen Z, all college kids that I talk to, is start today.
Terrific. Suvir, thank you very much. It's been such a pleasure speaking to you. I wish you, Foxymoron, all your media companies and your podcast lots of success.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, Ashutosh. Thanks so much.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.